Hey everybody, it's Sean Gibbons from the Communications Network. Welcome. You are here. We are here in community at V+. We're going to be having a conversation in just a short moment with Charles Vogl, the Art of Community author and author of Building Brand Communities. But as we're waiting for folks to come into the room, Mr. T, if you would, we made a little something for you. Let's show it to him. All right, everybody. So listen, welcome. Thank you for being with us. As you can see on your screen right now, pictures of some beautiful, really thoughtful souls and human beings. The man on the left right there, that handsome man, is Charles Vogl, and he is going to be who we're going to be talking to in just a quick minute. But we hope over the course of this next hour, we're going to have a conversation about two things that share the same root in Latin: the word community and the word communication. And they have a shared responsibility. You cannot have one without the other. Communication moves at the speed of trust, and trust is what we have when we sit in community. It's what we're hoping we're going to build together over the next many months as part of this whole V+ experiment. So thank you for being with us. Tristan, if we can go ahead and advance. My colleague Tristan Mahabir is running the slide deck alongside my colleague Carrie Klein. These lovely faces are about to become very close friends of yours if you didn't know them already. These are the faces of folks who are going to be the community ambassadors. And so over the next couple of days, don't worry if you haven't gotten your assignment yet, you will soon. We're going to be putting you into community in small groups of 6, not more than 7 or 8 people in your group that you're going to use as sort of a learning pod. Think of it as a virtual book club. You're going to be gathering, and these folks are going to take the assignment of facilitating and moderating conversations to help you get to where you need to go, and for all of us, that's safely into 2021. With a lot ahead of us, a pandemic that's still raging and is about to, wave 2 is about to arrive, a racial reckoning that's been unfolding across the span of this year, obviously climate crisis showing up in real ways for many of us, whether that's fires across the West Coast, a hurricane that just touched down in the Gulf states, or a derecho fairly recently that devastated parts of the Midwest and Iowa. So with all of that, thank you so much for being with us. I know we have 91 of you and a few more coming into the room. So just trying to make space for everybody. But let's go ahead, Tristan, and advance. You'll get your community group assignments in just a couple of days, and look forward to putting you in touch with all of those good folks. This is just a little reminder about probably, we hope, some of the reasons that you're here. That there's a lot going on in every one of our lives. We're all being called upon in so many new and unexpected ways, right? This is an opportunity for us to take some time together. And so we hope over the next couple of days, you'll be able to maybe put on that out of office message, tell your boss, tell your colleagues, tell your spouse, your loved ones, your family, your friends, give me a few minutes. I'm gonna take a little time for myself. We hope that that's what you're gonna be able to do. We're gonna learn together. We're going to spend a little bit of time focused on healing, frankly, because a lot of us are experiencing grief or stress in really profound ways. We are going to, hopefully over the course of these 3 months that we're together, we're going to all explore and get acquainted with some new ideas and forge some new relationships. And that word cloud that you see there on the screen, it's a little what we heard you report back to us, why you are here. You're hoping for community, you're hoping for meaning, you're hoping to connect, you're hoping to find other people. At a time when we're all at a distance, we're going to be on this exploration, this experiment that we're taking in V+ together. And that's the theme of our time, is together. Mr. T, if you would, go ahead and carry us forward. All right, and so now it's my great honor and pleasure to introduce someone who has been, from a distance, a mentor and a hero of mine, and I'm lucky to now, I hope he doesn't mind if I say this, but he's become a friend, and he is being very generous and kind with his time. He has written a book that has been just incredibly instructive. I highly recommend it, The Art of Community, and his more recent book that just came out a short time ago, Building Brand Communities. And so now, Charles, welcome. Glad to have you with us. He's going to take a few minutes to kind of walk through some of the big principles about community. And then we're going to have a little bit of a conversation, and then we're going to bring you in. And that's the other thing I should tell you. As we do, if you've been with us for previous network webinars, we typically ask you to type in your questions. We're going to ask you to do that as well. We're going to ask that again. But this time, if you'd like your question answered, we're going to ask you to come into community with us. And so we're going to ask you to turn on your video and actually join us in the conversation. So you'll be broadcasting and talking to everybody else. Don't worry, I've been here for a while, never been bitten. Everybody's kind and good, and we will extend a lot of grace to ourselves and to others over the course of this time together. So be prepared. If you have a question, be prepared to actually turn on your video and be part of that with us. With that, Charles, sir, please do take it away.
Well, good morning, all. Thank you, Sean, for inviting me into the space. I think it's important before we move forward. I'm calling from California, and this is a crazy time for everyone within America. And deep respect to you for showing up and paying attention to a conversation about community. I'm going to speak a little bit more in a moment about the fact that research shows we are living in the loneliest era of American history, not just the loneliest generation, but loneliest era. And of course, we're all dealing at a time where kids aren't in school. If you live anywhere near me, the air is poison, and we don't know about the future of the country. So coming together to learn how we can support one another and connect more seems to me profoundly important, and you're voting with your time and respect for you. The bulk of my time here visiting is going to be fielding questions that we know that are relevant on the minds of those of you who tuned in. So just know that's how we're going to use our time to make sure that it's helpful and we can move the needle as much as possible. And before we do that, I'll just introduce my work at a certain level, basic level, so you understand the perspective I'm coming from. Before we move forward, as you heard, Sean invited me because I'm an expert on community now, after having written a few books on this and speak on it. Before we go forward anymore, I'd like to be really clear. The reason that I can be an expert in community is I was lonely for a long time. And I was sometimes desperately looking for the place I knew I would belong, for the friends that I knew that I wanted, and largely failing. Earlier in my adulthood, I was a human rights activist in Africa. I organized laborers in New York City, and I was a genocide education activist as a PBS filmmaker for 7 years. And those are all really desperate experiences. In the rearview mirror, what I see now is those were the crucibles that taught me the importance of and how to bring people together around shared values and purpose, facing real challenges that would take far more than a week to handle. So that's how I got here. And the book that I wrote came after attending graduate school, where I studied then, after my activism, leaders in spiritual traditions, social movements, and political movements, and then understanding that there's a lot of wisdom that's kept a lot of people together for a long time that needed to be distilled and translated for our time. So that's what I bring here. And I really didn't find a community until I started learning that it wasn't, for me, about finding where I would fit in, but learning how I could invite people in to create the community where I would fit in. And now I have that support. So with that said, let's acknowledge that you, I, everybody we know, everybody we hire, everybody we work with, unfortunately, everybody we speak with, apparently is living in the loneliest era of American history. There are a number of statistics that we could reference. One, I think, telling issue about how important this is the Harvard Business Review has already published a front page article about loneliness in the workplace. And just this year, former Surgeon General Vivek Murthy published his book about the crisis of loneliness through his lens of seeing its effect on health. So it's not funny anymore. And when we understand that we're living in the loneliest era, the other thing we can understand is when we bring people together, when we invite people to come to a space, largely we're pretty lousy at connecting. If we were good at connecting, we wouldn't be so lonely. So it's not simply a matter of just making a reservation or simply shooting out a mass email and then wondering why the people we care about are not connecting as much as we want. So for the purposes of then stepping into this desert of connection, in my work, and Tristan, we can forward the slide, I define community for my work as a group of people who share mutual concern for one another. Right now in my work, I'm largely, if not exclusively, working with people in some kind of leadership role, including the communication network, in learning how to create a group of people who share mutual concern for one another. And this leadership can be formal or it can be informal. It doesn't matter. The idea is that we're trying to work toward that. And all I mean by leadership is that when we wake up and we do something, we're trying to grow these these relationships of mutual concern. In order to understand this more clearly, we need to understand the contrast. And Tristan, we can change for the slide. I've coined the term a mirage community. When I go out in the world, I talk to people in leadership, and when I see people bragging about how quickly they've created a community for their company or the nonprofit, largely what I see is they're not real communities. So we call them mirage communities. And what we mean by that is they look like a community from far away, or to someone who isn't trained to understand how to recognize a community, but really they're not. They're often lists of people who bought something, lists of people who showed up at an event, lists of people who clicked a button online. There is nothing wrong with lists. There's nothing wrong with an audience. There's nothing wrong with identifying who you want to connect with. They're just not communities. They may be the start of something that could be, but they're not that. And that's really important for us to understand so that when we're looking what are best practices and who's succeeding, we don't mistakenly follow people who are mostly bragging about success and they really don't have a community. And the danger there is if we have Mirage communities and declare them real communities, is we're not going to get the kind of rewards and the meaningful satisfaction we get when we're actually in community. And I know this is a relevant conversation for the communication network because I've now cumulatively spent hours speaking with Sean and his team about how the communication network wants actual community. They want professionals who actually know each other, who actually support one another, who will actually make a phone call and check in on one another during crazy times, which is an entirely different commitment than do we have a lot of people we can push information out in a broadcast message. Which leads me to reference something that Sean and I have discussed quite a bit, in that if you want to create a real community, and it doesn't need to be large, it takes more time than most people want it to. I can't tell you how many people I talk to who seek me out, and what they really want to know is what is the magic mass email they can send to create a community. Well, first of all, it doesn't exist. If it did exist, you would have downloaded it already and you'd be using it. A real community needs members who are in relationship. Sean said earlier, communities grow at the speed of trust. Nobody builds trust by getting mass emails. So we need to understand that when we actually want to connect people, somebody's going to have to do the work to then make the invitations and create spaces safe enough and satisfying enough that people return to build those relationships. So the last principle I want to introduce before we dive into something that hopefully is entirely relevant is what I call the Campfire Principle. The reason I bring this up is we live in an era where there's this mistaken myth that anytime there's an event, bigger and more is better. And that's just not true when we talk about community. If you think of all the conferences you've been to and you think of all the concerts you've been to, my guess is you didn't leave feeling really connected and really satisfied if your only experience was in a huge room with lots of people. Typically, we feel that connection. We feel that relationship growing when we have an experience and an intimate experience. So I labeled the Campfire Principle just to give us a sense of what we can look for when we go to an event and when we're planning an event, what will be a campfire. So hopefully everybody who's logged on right now has had a conversation around a campfire where you noticed when you left, you felt more connected with the people around that campfire, and you may have had conversations that you typically don't have elsewhere. What's going on there? So we list 3 criteria. The first one is members have physical proximity close enough to other people to have a possibly intimate conversation. When we're talking about an online space, that means rooms small enough where we're not shouting into a big space, so-called arena space, every time we talk. When I talk about online spaces, I'm typically talking about a space of 5 people or less, typically. The second criteria is members have permission with the time to have a potentially intimate conversation, which is to say they're not listening to some self-satisfied book author who thinks he's smart, who thinks he knows what you should be listening to, or there's some band playing, or there's some agenda that needs to be accomplished. There's room there to have that potentially intimate conversation. And the last criteria is all the conditions that would distract from a intimate conversation are handled. When we talk about spaces in the physical world, that could be a football game playing loudly on a television, people coming by the table to upsell drinks every few minutes, or even someone hiring a band to play so loudly we can't talk. And if you think about the experiences you've had where you feel really connected afterwards, you were close enough to someone where you could have the conversation, you weren't distracted by another agenda, and someone had handled all the distractions that would have pulled you away from that. And hopefully then you had that relationship. When we in a leadership role can recognize our members, we need campfire principles. We can notice what are those spaces? What are those times? And if we're shaking our hands because our community isn't coming together, one of the questions we can ask are, well, what are those campfire principles we're inviting people to so they can have the possibility of creating those relationships of mutual concern they're going to have. And I know this is relevant to the communication network because the team has shared with me the V commitment is an effort to experiment with creating the right campfire experiences, for this community. And given that nobody's done this in pandemic before, good luck with you and find out, the best way to dial it in for success. So those are the base ideas I wanted to share about framing my work. There's literally hundreds of more pages we could talk about, but let's make sure we talk about the relevant stuff. So Sean, let's hear what is going to be relevant this morning.
Yeah, we have a number of questions coming in and we're grateful for them. It looks like Abigail has a question. Abigail, if you'll give us permission, we will promote you. But while we're waiting to do that, Tristan will take responsibility for doing that in just a quick minute. I'm going to take the privilege of the first question, which is the folks who are assembled in this virtual room, this virtual arena space. Virtually all of them are charged with leading communications or helping to manage the communications for some of the most extraordinary and influential organizations on the planet, some of the larger foundations and nonprofits that are familiar to many of us. Why is community so important to people who do communications work?
Well, in my work, and Sean, everyone here has heard that my on-ramp to this work was working on really challenging things that were not going to get solved in years, and quite frankly, in our lifetime. Genocide's not going to get handled in our lifetime. And anything that takes challenge and coordination means people need to stick together for a long time. And that's not rocket science. And everybody in this call, I'm guessing, knows at a professional level, the way we keep people connected is communication. Unless we're grabbing them by the hair and pulling them somewhere, right? Unless there's shackles involved, it's communication. And we got to be good at that. And we need to say things that are relevant. And we need to say it at a pace that's going to let them know that they're still connected. And I'll just, one form of communication, I'm certain that people on this call know way more about what's effective communication over the long haul than I do. I can talk about, one form was invitation. We are in an era, I don't fully understand it, but we're in an era where we like to skip the invitation. And what I mean by an invitation is a communication that says somebody, Sean, somebody else, Charles, cares about you showing up. That could be my birthday. That could be a fundraiser. That could be a volunteer event. That could be a webinar where a whole bunch of professionals want to learn better how to connect in the loneliest era of American history in the middle of a pandemic. There's an invitation. The opposite of invitation is an announcement. A mass email is an announcement. If Sean gets an announcement from Charles that says, I'm going to be talking about my book and I think I'm important, that doesn't really draw a lot of connection. And even if you do show up, you don't understand somebody, in this case, Charles, cares that you showed up. Here's the crazy thing about invitations. They take time. Someone needs to take the 30 seconds to let Sean know that somebody, Charles, cares about you showing up. If you want to invite 10,000 people, 10,000 by 30 seconds is a lot. Bummer. Turns out people have been using invitations for a long time and they're still important. Since we're talking about communication, let's talk about what happens during an invitation. It doesn't matter if people accept your invitations. We want people to invite our invitations. That's why we make them. But let's understand that at communication level, those of us are crafting the invitation and then making sure it lands, that it almost doesn't matter whether people accept them for them to be powerful. Whenever we make an invitation, at least two things happen. The first is other people learn that somebody thinks they belong. Maybe they don't. Maybe we're mistaken, but they get a data point that says, we think you belong in the communication network, among my circle of friends, with these volunteers, among these donors, whatever that is. And maybe they can't come because they've got special needs kids. Maybe they've got poison air outside their house. Who knows, right? That data still lands, that data point. The second thing that happens is that they learn that they know somebody who has the power to bring people together. In the loneliest era of American history, a lot of people, including me, want to know we know people who have the power to bring people together so that we're not alone, and they think that we belong with them at some level. Even if I'm taking care of a special needs child and leaving my home's not going to happen for months and months and months. That data still happens. We who communicate those invitations change the world. I've been speaking around the country, and I've talked about this distinction invitation. Are you making invitations? Do people understand the invitations? Are you sending out enough invitations? And I've had people stand up and share how an invitation has literally changed their life because they understood, wow, this group of people really wants me connected. So there's just one form of communication that is literally life-changing as much as we change lives, world-changing.
Talk about, as I know he's a neighbor, you're in Oakland, not to call it exactly where you are, but just down the street, John A. Powell, is professor at Berkeley, has done a lot of work on belonging. Can you explain from your perspective, from the work you're doing on community, what does it take to achieve that sense of belonging? And is that important when you're building community?
Yeah, so this is a smart crowd, and I don't want to say anything trite and flippant and pretend that it's the full conversation. A lot of ink has been written on how people get connect and whatnot. For the purposes of our time, we can talk about generally when people show up. When I make an invitation, someone shows up, be a volunteer event or simply a shared dinner or a Zoom call. Typically doesn't happen until we see two things. One is other people need to believe, hopefully accurately, that other people there see them for who they really are, as opposed to what I call avataring. When we're in a leadership role in community, we need to assume people are showing up avataring. And all I mean by avataring is they're showing us the version of themselves they think the world wants to see. So for example, in the communication network, new members who don't understand how this culture really works may show up and just want to be that consummate professional who's got everything handled and is going to take on the world. Fine, there's a reason we do that. To get to real community, we need to create a space where they feel comfortable, where they can share something different, what they're really struggling with, such that knowing other professionals in their field who have answers might help them, especially in crises, right? So we need to get to a place where people believe accurately that others see them who they really are. The second thing we need is they need to notice that people accept them for who that person is. And here's why I bring that up. What typically happens to people who aren't skilled at building community is someone shows up and someone says, "Hi, I'm Sean." And I say, "Welcome, Sean." And I say, "What do you do, Sean?" And Sean says, "Well, I'm the CEO of the communication network." And I say, "That's great, Sean. That's so important. You must do fantastic work. I could never do that," right? We've all been part of those conversations. Sean, you know exactly how much more of this conversation you want to have, right? You definitely want to find somebody else to talk to. And what's going on is I've data mined, "What do you do, Sean?" And then I'm announcing the judgment. Very few of us want to show up in a new place, get data mined, and then have people announce their judgment, no matter it's good or bad, because I'm not just accepting you for who you are. Now, to be really clear, this doesn't mean don't ask questions. It doesn't mean you can't judge. It doesn't mean you can't tell people they're doing a good job. Just notice, typically people don't like spaces where their first experience is getting data mined and then announcing judgments from people they don't know and don't know them well. So we need to create a space that is what we call safe enough. Safe, that they can share who they are and be accepted, but safe enough. If it's completely safe, A, I don't even know if that exists, but B, then there's no room for risk. There's no room for risk, no room for vulnerability, no deep connections. So amongst the things that happen is we need to notice how the space is safe enough and how we're inviting people to share who they really are when they're ready. And usually that happens, if not always happens, when leadership goes first. When leadership demonstrates this is a vulnerable space where you don't have to avatar all the time. So I think that's enough for the time we have here.
Thank you. And so our friends, we're going to start modeling what this is going to look like. Maureen, you have a question. If you will unmute yourself, and if you can, join us on video. And then Simone, you will follow. But Maureen, you have the pleasure. And we can see you. Now let's see if we can hear you, my friend. Hey, how are you?
Hi, good. How are you all?
Very well. Nice to see you. Where are you?
I'm in Aurora, Colorado.
Good. Hopefully safe and well.
Yes, safe and well. Both of those things with coffee.
Oh, good. I've got mine too. All right. Well, you're not asking, we're asking you questions, but you had a question for Charles. It was an excellent one, if you would.
Yeah, so I think in just kind of these times, and Charles, thank you so much for being with us. This has been so, I think, insightful and enlightening so far that I feel really kind of...
Good. The plan is working, Maureen.
Huh?
The plan is working.
Yes, I feel re-motivated here. So I guess I'm interested in this idea of kind of the campfire and how to keep the momentum of a campfire community going and not have it be like too summer campy or too trite, I guess, in these times.
So what I just want to, I think I know how I want to respond. It'd be helpful. Could you tell me what you mean by summer camp, summer campy?
Sure. I guess I mean like maybe possibly like too rah-rah in these times, if that makes sense. That's probably even less confusing than summer campy, actually. I guess more like structured with a ton of activities and like really with the intention to like, make people feel a certain way at the end.
You mean manipulative?
Sure.
I mean, if you're bringing people together to just to quote your question, to make them feel a different way, that's fundamentally a manipulative experience that you're crafting, maybe
Right.
unintentionally. And I think none of us want to go somewhere where there's somebody with a keyboard saying, "Well, I can't wait for you to get here because I want to manipulate you."
Yeah, I guess I've seen a lot of, like, in this kind of current environment, I've seen a lot of these like pop-up virtual events that are like heavily themed, and give off kind of this, like, it comes across as a really inauthentic vibe. So I'm just wondering how you balance, I don't, like, almost like branding element with the community element.
Okay, so there's a whole bunch of stuff you're touching on, and I want to speak to the parts that are relevant to you and those who have logged on. So I'm going to take a stab at what might be relevant and what you've touched on. So first of all, I'm talking about community. Again, a group of people who share mutual concern. What I did not say is a bunch of people who like your brand. Okay. There is a community of Harley Davidson riders. There is a community of Patagonia adventurous athletes who are invited to the Patagonia headquarters and are Patagonia invests in them. There is a community of gosh, for any sport ever, right? And they buy gear. But they don't get together to feel good about Patagonia or Harley Davidson or Nike, although those firms may invest in creating the venue, which could be a sports event or a ride. Nobody, to my knowledge, joins a Harley Davidson ride to love Harley Davidson. They go because they want to ride with other people who ride. And if you take away the riding part or helping them be better riders, that's a really lousy event, right? It's just a buy jackets experience. So I'm talking about community, not marketing. Community can be used for marketing, but you got to come in the right way, right? I'm trying to think of a good simplified metaphor, but I think hopefully that's self-evident. I write about a lot about, if this really interests you, I write a lot about this in my latest book because some brands come in this backwards, right? People want to ride their Harley Davidsons, not just sell their friends Harley Davidsons. So first of all, we need to see where we're trying to manipulate people, and then just notice most people hate that, and we'll probably get reactions to that consistent. So maybe that's what you're responding to. And I would call that not community building. I would call that manipulation or marketing, totally confused about what is community building and understanding how that serves a brand. I could go on a lot of examples with Sephora. Sephora invests in this, Salesforce, but what they're doing is they're investing in a subset of, say, customers, and they invest heavily in those customers, which are a very small subset. And then you typically do that with the online component. And then the way those customers serve the brand is not simply by buying the most, although they're usually people who are above average customers for those brands. They serve by helping the innovation for the company, because now the designers have access to the people who are really tapped into that market, and they act as a filter to understand where should we be going. So I mentioned the Patagonia athletes. Those are elite athletes that Patagonia invites them in to be ambassadors, and they invest in events so that the athletes know the people of the company better and they know each other better, but they don't bring them in to sell them lots of Patagonia gear. Right. But when you know the top rock climbers in the world and the top skiers in the world and the top surfers in the world, do you think your feedback loop for your R&D is better than your competition? Like, what do you think? Right. And that's where the investment really, pays off. And there are other ways that we could talk about. The other one is the other way it helps marketing is if you have access to the most active, most knowledgeable, most influential people in your market. When you release something new, as Patagonia did, a totally biodegradable wetsuit, obviously the market learns about your innovation faster when the people who know the most and are most admired talk about it, as opposed to just buying posters, right? But again, those top athletes are not there to buy more wetsuits, right? You got to know which direction you're coming in. So I hope that's helpful. I mean, we could talk a lot about different aspects of what you mentioned. But manipulation and community are typically oil and water. And if you don't get that, you'll create something and it'll be just as appealing as oily water.
Maureen, did we get you to where you needed to go? Answer
Yeah,
the question?
definitely. That was great.
Awesome. Well, let's hope that we are, over the course of the next few months together, going to be together rather than oil and water. And with that, I think Simone, if we can bring you on, my friend, I'm glad you're here and it's nice to see you. I don't know if everybody else can see you, but you had a question and you're safe and well up in the Northeast, I'm hoping.
Yes, yes, I am. Thank you. Enjoying the cooler weather, even though it's a little early. My question was revisiting your point about invitations versus mass emails. And so just as a marketer, you know, I do need to scale things. And so if I do want to, you know, even on a small scale, invite 1,000 people to something, how do I do that? How do I make an invitation? How do I send an invitation to 1,000 people without mass communications or without a mass email?
So there's a bigger conversation here of what you're really trying to create. So again, community is people who share mutual concern for one another. It is not bad to create an event where you invite 1,000 people and if you expect a 20% yield, 200 people to show up in a room. That is not bad. Think through your adult life and think how many events you've been to that you're not yet connected with, right? Otherwise, you have a friend who would call you and say, make sure you know that next Thursday there's this thing that you're not yet, and think how many times you got a mass email that was 1 out of 1,000 people, and how many times you showed up to an event where there were 199 other people there who didn't yet feel connected, and how many times you left and felt really connected and wanted to invest more. And the answer is approximately 0, right? And maybe you got lucky, right? But it's approximately 0 in your entire adult life. So let us just be reasonable that your results may not exceed that on balance. And nobody else is really nailing that either. If you start small and you have a core group, well, so let's also talk about the Pareto Principle. In community, we typically see resources never exceeding the Pareto Principle. So in the communication network, well, we'll use a different one so I don't ask things I shouldn't. If you think of a professional organization you've been a part of, and there were 1,000 people in it, typically only about 200 of them are really active, and the other 800 were largely receiving emails and telling people they were a member. Okay, you're nodding, so you have some sense of this. And that's just how the world seems to work out. When we talk about online experiences, we see an exaggerated Pareto principle. So for example, Twitch is a company I've worked with, and they have over 200 million unique users a month. And it's far less than 1% of those users that do the bulk of the work that makes Twitch work. And they're internationally admired multi-billion-dollar tech company, subsidiary of Amazon. And they're working on far less than 1% who are really engaged. Now, far less than 1% of 200 million is for realsies. But let's just understand when we look at the scale, it's not that 18 or 15% are really doing the heavy lifting. And I break that down with more granularity in the book if this interests you. So, first of all, we're not going to expect a high yield in general, and given our time and it's an online event, we're going to expect a far less yield than even 20%. So if you're 1,000, I would expect high fives all the way around if 200 people show up. And then of those 200, I'm only expecting 40 of them to really express any real interest in getting involved. So depending on what your aspirations are, you may want to rethink the strategy of creating a community with 1,000 invitations, because your results are going to be mediocre best. And if that's what you want, fair enough, but just know that's probably where the road's leading. If you start small, right, so you invite 100 people, you expect 20 of them to show up and see if this sucks or not. And then you invest in those 20 people, and then they have a good enough experience that they're willing to evangelize, which is to say, invite other people. Now you can build those leaders up to lead, that they can be inviting other people. And with time, you then can reach a community of 1,000, but you have to do it the other way around, because you're going to invite those 20 people who did show up to the next thing, to the next thing, to the next thing, and you can expand out 20. But those are where their invitations happen. They know Simone cares if you show up, because it's so exciting that we care about the same thing. We didn't talk about the fact that all communities work because there's some shared values, at least one, and a shared purpose, at least one. Typically there are more, but if you don't got one, good luck with that, right? So when you invite 1,000 people, high fives all around if 20 show up. Best case scenario is 40 want to get involved more and help you build this thing. That's only going to work because they perceive accurately what is the shared value. We like riding Harley Davidsons and expressing our freedom, right? And their purpose. We want to do that more often. I want to fix my bike. Whatever it is. By the way, it totally counts if the purpose is to make friends. We are in a lonely era. People want friends. That totally counts. The problem is if the purpose is to make friends, like they're shown to make friends, but you think the reason the era to fix Harley Davidsons more and every event is let's learn from another mechanic, and they don't have time to make friends. Or you think the reason they're coming together is to make friends, or mostly, and really the reason they're coming this time with you and not their spouse is they want to get better at fixing the motorbikes. You can have balance, fair enough, but we need to understand that we need to serve the purpose of why they're coming together. So that core group, we call it the 4% is the critical group, no bigger than 4%, and that 20% we call the core group. They need to understand the shared values and purpose, and then you provide programming, which can just mean time together, right? Riding a motorcycle, that serves that purpose. Then when your members in time get trained and they build up, then they can have their own, what we call a segment. There's going to be the Oakland group and the Aurora group and the New York group. And so if we look at brands, for example, like CrossFit, there are, I don't know how many hundreds of thousands of CrossFitters. When a CrossFitter goes to a CrossFit event, they're not going to convene with 10,000 other people. They're convening with their gym that's called a box in CrossFit. And we know it's a box because there's an owner of that gym and their class has a coach, and they don't connect with all CrossFit coaches or even all CrossFit coaches in Oakland. They're connecting with their coaches of their classes. That's connected with the owner of that gym. My point is, that's how CrossFit has a huge community, and they definitely have a community. It's because they started from the bottom, they built up those leaders, and everybody has their segment of a campfire experience. And at CrossFit, the campfire experience is your class, right? If someone hurts themselves in your class, you care. You will call the paramedics. You will put their bleeding body in your car and drive them to the hospital. You won't be like, sucks to be them. I guess their wad's going poorly, right? So I hope that's helpful, Simone.
Yes, it is. Thank you so much. And you saying that made me another question, but I don't want to skip people, so no, I will wait until the end.
As long as it's relevant to 116 people, Simone.
Yeah, go ahead, Simone.
Well, okay, hearing you riff on that made me it popped in my head Facebook groups and how much I use Facebook groups, how many of those are associated with brands, how Facebook is really pushing groups, and just kind of wanted to hear you speak on that.
Okay, so I know people who work at Facebook, and obviously Facebook comes up in my work. I don't know, they changed their algorithm so much that I don't pretend to keep up with it. Here's what Facebook's interested in. Facebook's interested in your members putting their eyes on Facebook. The number of people who spent an hour this week worrying if your members feel connected to one another and you is approximately 0. The number of people I would trust with the success of your group coming together in a safe space and feeling confident and communicating freely, who will not spend 15 minutes this week concerning themselves with that, is 0. I think Facebook is a terrible place to build community. In fact, I think it's a toxic place to build community, because the reason why Facebook wants your people there is so they can share their messages, their communication on their agenda. Is that fundamentally bad all the time? Probably not. Is that environment you would choose to build a community you care about? I hope not. So, it's the reality of our culture, and people are going to use it, fair enough, but we need to go in wide-eyed what's going on there, right? I would never invite you to my home for dinner if my home was owned by somebody who doesn't care about you or care about me or about a relationship, but they really, really want to sell you a lot of shoes. And they're going to be in control of how often we talk, when we talk, and how many shoes are mentioned while we talk. We would never do that, but that's what's going on at Facebook. So, keep that in mind. So there's several kinds of communication in community, which I'm sure there are experts on this call now who know about. There's broadcast. So we are largely broadcasting right now. We're trying to make this more dyadic, but it's you and me talking to 120 people or so, right? Nothing wrong with that. And we're providing information that hopefully helps 120 people be who they want to be. Part of the purpose of this is to help people mature into the professional they want to be. Are we succeeding? I don't know. But that's the aspiration, right? But when I log off here, Simone, I'm not going to feel deeply connected with 115 people, and they're not going to feel really deeply connected with me, and they're not going to wonder like, how's Charles' family doing in Poison Air, Oakland, right? So it's not bad, but it's not building connection. So you can use Facebook for what we call broadcasting, and it might give information your community needs, but you need to be clear-eyed that that is not a resource that's going to help you knit together that community when in fact that's what we're doing. Right? It's helping you broadcast to a list. Not bad, but something different.
Yeah, I was definitely thinking about it as initially as the perspective as a customer or consumer. So like I recently started getting into hiking. So I went into Facebook, found hiking groups for Massachusetts. And now, you know, I'm meeting people through that and building a community through that. So
yeah, so let's look at that, right? My
Yeah.
guess is you met people not in an arena space and you had conversations in a campfire experience. Yeah.
Yes, correct.
So Facebook helped you in arena space get to the campfire experiences, and the campfire experience is what makes you think, oh, now I'm connected with other hikers. Great. That's how we want it to work. The danger comes when we don't recognize that's how it worked and we cut off the critical last half of that. Right. And my guess is when you talk to, so there's probably less than 10 hikers you actually feel connected with, but there's probably hundreds of thousands of people in this group. Am I right?
Well, it's smaller than that. It's like 500 or 600. But yes, totally agree.
Okay,
And I feel
500
like
counts.
I'm capitalizing your time. So
No, as long as it's relevant,
now.
this is a good use of the time, Simone. And I think this is a fantastic point because we, ending this call, want to be clear-eyed about what's really going on. There's 500 people in that group, but you only feel connected with probably less than 10. I'm guessing no more than 6. But your experience of that is you're really connected. And I could say, but Simone, you know, the leaders are really failing. You are not connected with 496 of them or 494 of them, right? Man, they really got their program together. No, you've got what you're looking for. And you are appropriately, my guess is proactively making sure you have a cadence of intimate conversations with those 6. Okay, you're nodding, so I'm not totally wrong all the time, right? Here's what we need to learn as a leadership role. We need to make sure there's a cadence of invitation. It sounds like you're making them and they're making them. And if our members have a cadence of invitation to an intimate experience with some frequency appropriate for them, right? That's a success. That's what it looks like. And your experience is, wow, that really worked. It is not, is there a group, is there a meeting of 400 people and, you know, that's the majority of people on this list showing up. So thanks for great questions.
Okay, next question, we're going to go to Abigail. My friend, if you would unmute yourself and put on your camera, if you would. Then Tanya and Josh, just stand by, please. And thank you, Simone. That was awesome. Abigail, to you, my friend. How are you?
Good, thank you. How are you?
I'm well. Where are you?
I am in Jerusalem, Israel.
Oh my goodness, what time is it?
It is 8:43 p.m.
Whew, okay.
And here's to hoping my pizza does not show up in the middle of this conversation.
I'm guessing you don't have enough to share with all of us, but duly noted. If you need to run away, we are recording this.
Thank you. So my question, I work for ROI Community. We are a community of like-minded individuals all over the world. But something that we've been struggling with in the last 9 months, as I'm sure many other people on this call have been also, is understanding how we can pivot our community and the way that we interact with them. A lot of our activities are have been very in-person based. And so now we are struggling a little bit to understand, now that we've had to pull everything online, how do we do that effectively? How do we do that given the vast amount of activity that's happening online these days? And given the limitations that we are up against with people's individual stressor levels, their very busy schedules, and all of, politics and all these different things. And how do we effectively continue to have strength and connected community?
Okay, so you touched a lot of stuff there, which I can't with integrity address fully without giving you trite BS, right? So, and I also don't know enough about your organization, its history, its expectations and aspirations to speak to that. And I like to use the analogy of a marriage. If someone comes to me and says, Charles, how to make our community more better? And like someone says, Charles, how to make my marriage better? And if I don't know the history of your marriage, I don't know what you want out of your marriage, I don't know what's working and not working in your marriage, I got nothing, really good to say. And I know that. And I say that so I'm not full of hubris, that not knowing those things, like I know what you should do. So let's be really clear about something. There is no formula. If there was, you'd have downloaded it and we wouldn't be talking now. And by the way, everybody would be really connected in community and happy and know exactly what they need to do to feel that way with professionals or philanthropically, spiritually, or familially, right? So it's messy. You got to figure it out. We're also living in a time, as you mentioned, Abigail, a lot of trauma. I know my family alone, I got a toddler, and we've been in Oakland for 6 months, and we got poison air. That ain't normal. So let's just be really clear-eyed that what most of us are not looking for is another to get really involved and active and distracted, because we're, if people are bathed when they should get bathed and fed okay, and the air doesn't poison us, that's like pretty awesome. So I think for most communities, what we need to be focusing on right now is healing and support. Now that can include some mobilization at some point for activism, and God bless you for doing that. But even if you're mobilizing people for activism, let us acknowledge there's need for healing and support, especially when there's financial collapse in the United States going on. 1 out of 4 workers no longer have their jobs. There's some stress there. So let us just forgive ourselves if we're not getting people activated, what we call mobilized, at the same level we were when the conditions were different. I don't know what you want to do with these people, which would obviously make a big difference on how you would plan. But we can talk about the principle. What your members are looking for when they come together are at least 2 things. They want to know how they can be who they want to be better. And we use the form of being because I don't know what they're going to do. If you and I meet about cooking, Abigail, and you want to be a better cook, you want to be a better chef, I don't know if any given day we're going to clean fish, we're going to squeeze tomatoes, we're going to go over checklists, or we're going to practice cleaning pans. But all of those radically different activities are helping us be a better cook. Your members want to be something, which is why they're coming together. And they may be slightly different. If it's a bicycling group, there may be people want to be better mountain bikers, people want to be better racers, people who want to be better winter riders, right? And those do radically different things. We call those segments, right? But nonetheless, there's something that they want to be better at. Sometimes we just get better at something because we are friends with, have access to people who are elders, right? If I want to be a better chef, me hanging out with a bunch of famous chefs will probably make me be a better chef. And maybe that's all someone needs to do is invite me into those kitchens or into those conversations, maybe. Or I might get really bored because they talk about the same stuff all the time, right? I don't know. And elders, if they're in community and they want to be connected, they also want to learn. They also want to help others mature. And when you read my first book and I talk about the inner rings, one of the things we need to do in leadership role is give elders a chance to help enrich more junior members, right? Otherwise, we can't contribute. It has to do with contributing to the community as opposed to just being a taker. So there are elders in your community, especially if you're of meaningful size, who right now are jonesing, aching to find a way how they can help others in the community and don't know how. And with interviews, i.e. conversations, you can find out what they want to do. I spent over 20 years as an activist, including genocide activism and human rights activism in Africa. And I know that there's a whole generation right now of millions of Americans who are trying to make America more just and more safe. And they're literally getting hurt, right? And I don't know what to do. I can't do what they're doing now better, and they're doing it in a different context, and they're doing it at a different time, and they're doing it a different way. I also know we're in an age-segregated era where those of us who spent 20 years doing that don't have access to people who are doing this to share with them the lessons that we learned the hard way so they can learn different lessons the hard way. I don't even know how to do that. That's practically why I'm creating a podcast to help that. But my point is, I want to help you, 26-year-old, as a 46-year-old, be effective. Please don't learn lessons I had to learn the hard way. Learn different lessons. How do I do that? If Sean tomorrow invited me to a program to do that, I would sign up. My point is, you have elders who are longing to offer support in some way. Do people want it? I don't know, but they're longing. The other thing they're going to look for is they're looking for small experiences, typically in online rooms of 5 or less. And I'll just say quickly, the reason 5 or less is it's math. In a typical hour, you're going to spend 5 minutes on technical hoo-ha, and you're going to spend 5 minutes at the end saying, thanks for coming, next time we're going to meet, blah, blah, blah. You only have 50 minutes. If you have more than 5 people, we're looking at an average time of less than 10 minutes. Most people don't feel really engaged, really heard, really understood if they have less than 10 minutes an hour to share with people. So that 6th and 7th and 8th person gets really expensive really quickly. I encourage you to have longer than 1 hour meetings, but my point is the time math doesn't work. How connected do you feel with 7 minutes to be connected, sharing yourself and whatever? So part of what needs to happen is, if you want to be successful, is let them understand we're meeting for this shared purpose, and implicit in that, the shared value. It sounds like you already have members. And we're going to be in groups of small groups. Because there is this myth in our culture that bigger is better, it's really confusing to people. Like, what? I spent an hour with 3 other people and we're going to talk about cooking, blah, 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 or cooking in a pandemic, or cooking for a family without. And then what really happens is they're stunned how rich and powerful the experience is. Why? Because they have time to listen deeply. They have time to ask a question that's intimate and get a vulnerable answer. And they have time to share what's really going on for them. As a point of contrast, literally yesterday, I talked to an executive of a 500-person firm who reached out to me, and they assigned their 500 employees in groups of 10. So nobody chose why they're meeting around a shared values and purpose. They put them in groups of 10 in online rooms once a month for 1 hour. So people didn't choose to gather around shared purpose. They only get 1 hour. There's 2 people in the room. It's only once a month, i.e. a not very strong cadence. And she told me, oh, the feedback we're getting is 1 hour is too long. They don't have anything to talk about after 30 minutes. Nobody on this call has been at a lunch with 9 other people, and at 30 minutes, someone said, well, gee, I guess there's nothing to talk about. Let's just eat silently. Okay. The fact that they're getting that feedback tells us they're doing everything wrong, right? Not the least of which is you got 10 people in a room for an hour who didn't choose to be there for shared values and purpose. How do you think that's going to go? I bring that up because that's how bad the leadership is out there. And if you can do better than that, you're going to see profoundly different results. So I hope that's helpful.
Thank you. It is. It's given me a lot to think about and a lot to take back to the team. So thank you.
Yeah, this is just the tip of the iceberg. So please don't think that I've solved your problems and know what you should do.
Thank you, Abigail, and glad you're staying with us late into the hour. Tanya, my friend, former network board member, welcome. Thank you for joining us. You had a question.
Hi, thank you so much, Charles. This is fabulous. I wanted to go back to something you said at the beginning because I got a little lost. You were talking about, let's say Sean shows up at a conference and you say, hey, Sean, what do you do? And you sort of data mine him. Mm-hmm. I guess I don't understand why asking somebody what they do is bad. And I don't understand what data mining was going on there. If you told me what you do and I said, I think that's really fascinating, why is that wrong?
So it's not bad and wrong. It is not consistent with a setting that allows people to feel confident. Well, first of all, I mean, there's so many things going on here, Tanya. First of all, it's a very classist conversation. We ask people what they do because we think the answer is not embarrassing. And a lot of people don't define themselves by their jobs, and they don't want other people to judge them by the jobs. The fact that you would ask that within the first 15 minutes of meeting them tells them that you want to judge them, whether you think so or not. And I'll just tell you, if Sean this morning asked me, so Charles, what do you do? My answer could be, well, I write books, I fly around the country, and I talk to some of the most influential organizations on the planet on how to connect people critical to them. And he might say, that sounds great. But if he'd asked me the same question in 2004, my answer would have been, I wait tables on the Upper West Side in New York City, and I fetch drinks for people going to the theater. Same guy. I don't think I'm any smarter now or less smart than I was then. But Sean's answer probably wouldn't have been, wow, that sounds really great, right? So what does it matter that Charles is asking me in 2020 as opposed to 2005? Just notice there are layers there that are going on and how that relationship is getting set up beyond a simple answer, I write books. And if you really want to invite people in the space and help them feel comfortable, you may want to just turn as far away from that conversation as possible. Look, if you're having a room full of executives who are communication directors and you want to know if someone's a communication director, ask them, right? But if you don't know anything about me, that's setting me up for a relationship that tells me you want to judge me. And then if you announce the judgment, what I got is the nature of our relationship is you asked how data that you can judge, and then you announce your judgment. Look, if you're in your tribe, in your class with shared understanding, mutual respect, that can work great. A lot of places that doesn't work. And quite frankly, when I fly around the country used to go to conferences, it always graded me. I was often in conferences where people are trying to size up who's senior here and who's important or whatever. And right now I'm largely winning that game because they're flying me in, but I don't want to have the conversation, right? So this is not the best thing to say in the world, but it's what I say. I say, Tanya, so I'm curious, what brought you to join us here today? And you might say, well, I'm a communication executive and I really want to excel in my career. And I understand this resource is going to help me handle, some really sticky stuff. I'm like, oh, okay. And then I'll say, I'm curious, what inspired you to work in communication? And you might say, well, when my mother died, what I really noticed is, and I wanted to do X better. And now we're going to talk about something that you really care about. That's how I handle that. I don't think it's the platonic ideal, but notice none of that conversation did I say, so I just want you to know, I'm trying to figure out if you're good enough for me to spend more time with or you're better than me. Right. Even by accident.
Got it. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, we have time for one more question. Josh, the question goes to you. If you don't mind, sir, unmute yourself. And thank you, Tanya. But Josh, unmute yourself. And if you would put on your camera, I can see you there. How are you, sir? And where are you?
I'm as okay as a person can be in a basement in Seattle, a nice basement. So I'm privileged to be in the basement, but the air really sucks here.
I'm sorry. Yeah, I know that y'all are going through a lot, and I'm just sorry. I have family in Seattle as well. So
who would have thought you would wrestle a man for HEPA filter, huh, Josh?
I'm waiting for the HEPA filter to arrive, and I'm fortunate I was able to order one, but it hasn't come yet. So this has been really interesting, and I appreciate the conversation. Kind of a lot of the things I think, from my perception, though, in terms of building community, it sounds like there's some like-mindedness already. And I'm curious from your experience as, human rights activist and overall, what about when we really are bringing or trying to create a community?
I'm so glad you brought that up, Josh.
What?
I'm so glad you brought that up.
Difficult conversations. For example,
Right.
I work at Pyramid Communications. We do work with nonprofits and foundations on social causes, and we need to help bring a community together in an area where there are really different views about racism, and there are actually instances of current racist practice. And there's desire to have a genuine conversation that will lead to a community, honestly, that understands anti-racism.
Right. So you want me to speak to then how do we even approach that using frameworks of community that are time tested?
Yep.
I'm so glad you brought this up because Josh, you probably know better than I. There's a lot of people who say, gee, these people don't like these people. Let's put them in a room and have them talk about what they don't like about each other. Right. Nobody in this room has seen that go well. I don't care if it's a marriage is not working or if it's bullies at school or if it's racists, right? It doesn't go well. And the reason is for those difficult conversations to happen, and I'm certain there are people on this call who are much bigger experts in this than me, it's because we need a grounding of relatedness. And that relatedness never starts with, oh, this is why I don't like you, and now say things that I hate. We have to start with, where are the commonalities, right? So that once we have the grounded relatedness, and now we are both human to each other, and we share some value. We want everybody in our community, which could be America, to have enough to eat. We want kids to be safe, to not get shot. We want people to be confident their government won't shoot, beat, or kidnap them. Like, we all agree on this, right? Only then, in broad strokes, can we get to a place where we can have the conversation about where we disagree, right? How do we make sure kids don't get shot, right? I was at a conference where someone was bragging about, they created a community forum on the East Coast, I believe it's North Carolina, where they brought together red people and blue people, and it was so successful. And all they had to do was get this room, bring people in the room, and I think they ordered pizza or something like pizza, whatever it was. And I was sitting in that room shaking my head, like I'm the expert who writes on community, right? And when I was finally able to then drill down deeper what was really going on, there were pillars of the community who have been connected for decades, who were on the committee, who had hundreds of conversations to do the groundwork to create this gathering, who personally invited people in the community with whom they had relationships for decades before that meeting began. Guess what? It went well. Yeah, if you have people working for 20 years, building the relatedness and building the trust and holding the space, sure, a room of conflict will work. If you try to emulate that and cancel the first 20 years of grounded relatedness and the personal invitations, It's not going to work. So the reason I'm so glad you brought it up is people see something like that and they think, oh, you just order pizza and schedule a room and put people who hate each other in a room and like throw a grenade in the middle. My favorite example in the real world was I heard about a college who wanted to bring Palestinian and Israeli international students together because there was conflict in the world, not just at school, in the world. And it didn't work. All the programming, it didn't work. And the question that was floated was, what is your programming? And they would create events where they would come together in a room and talk about the conflict in Israel. So they created events where teenagers talked about the most violent, most intractable conflict of their histories ever, and then were surprised they didn't get along. What if they had brought them together around foods your grandmother makes, things you love about holidays, how your faith supports you in crisis? What if they had those events for 6 months before they floated the conversation, how does this conflict affect you and what do you think we should do about it? Everything would be different. So we need to look, before we take on people who are not talking in conflict, how are we knitting together those relationships of mutual concern before we throw into something toxic and then act surprised that toxicity harms relationships? Is that helpful, Josh?
It is helpful in theory. I think there's an urgency that we have where I'm not sure that we have the time to...
Look, I don't know what your programming is, and I don't know what results you want. You know, whatever else is true, it sounds like you're not confident you can get the results you want now. And all I'm saying is, in principle, I don't know the organization, I don't know what you've been doing, I don't know what the challenges are, I don't know what the aspirations are, I don't even know who the members are, so I don't pretend to know what you should be doing. The principle is, if you're not investing on how these people can find where they share values and find where they share purpose, and then have what we call camaraderie, where they can perceive accurately that they share these things, I think you're slamming your head against a wall and complaining about it. Now, the reason I say perceive shared values and purpose is they may all share the same values and purpose. People in Portland may all share the value, we don't want outsiders coming in here in trucks and harassing citizens and shooting them with non-lethal weapons. We would like to have that Portland. How we get there may be very different. If we're in that room where everybody believes that's the case, we need to make sure that there's a conversation invited where they can discover we all share that value. And the purpose of Together is, how do we protect Portlanders from outsiders coming with trucks and shooting us with paintballs and spraying us with poison? Right. Let's start there. And I'm just telling you, Josh, and if I'm wrong, please, I'm not kidding. Call me and tell me. If you can find a way to have people who hate each other and would, if given the opportunity, harm each other without consequence, to come up with a resolution that's constructive without investing in helping them perceive shared values and purpose, I would like to know it, because I will throw away everything I know and double down on that. I'm not kidding, because we need it.
I wasn't suggesting something as extreme as what you've just challenged.
Right. I'm really sensitive about this because I don't know about you, Josh. I only know people I've talked to. They just want to skip that part. They want to get to making other people wrong and fixing them. And guess how we got here?
Right. Well, that's why there's the question, because it's not going to get to that place. It's actually, and I understand the premise and I completely agree with it, in getting it going to bring people together, or bring people virtually now, which is a whole other challenge to this, around shared values, is critical and also challenging to get them to accept your invitation.
Hey, Josh, it was easy. It would have been done before, right? And you wouldn't be here now. So respect to you. You know, all the things that I worked on in activism were things that had not been handled before me for a reason. Right. And I certainly didn't handle them. So respect that you're taking on something that maybe can't be handled in your lifetime. And you and I both know you're standing on the shoulders of 5 generations who are working on it, and they never declared victory.
Right.
Maybe this is a good place, because you just spoke to this, Charles, and I know we need to close because we've gone over time, so I'm grateful for everybody. And Josh, thank you for that good question, and I hope you're staying safe. Charles, talk about time, because that's the one thing we've touched on it in a couple different places, but maybe you could speak to it directly as a way to close us out, understanding that for everybody who's still with us, this is the beginning of a journey. We're actually going to devote time to this project of coming together in community, in small groups over the next several months. But talk about time, because you and I have talked about this an awful lot. I think it's really
you know, at the end of the day, you know, it takes so many months to make a kid, and it takes so many hours to leaven good bread. It's going to take time to build community. And for those of you who are still listening and you care about this and you're learning, and it sounds like you want to make a difference with some group of people, with Josh, it sounds like at least volunteers. It's going to take more time than virtually everybody you know thinks it will, and they're going to get mad about it. And we know that they're not right because we can see the state of affairs, and we can see how lonely they are, and we can see how successful they are. And there's a reason that they're frustrated that it's not working. It's going to take more time. And in every community that you're a part of, that you really feel connected to, and you would love to get a call at 3 a.m. to find out someone needs your help so you can get up and help them, somebody is investing the time to invite people to events, to make those events work, to stay connected and make those phone calls. Typically, we see that in no more than 20% of the groups. If you have a group of 10 friends or 10 neighbors, my guess is 2 of you are doing the bulk of the work for those 10 friends to be connected, and that's just how it is. My point is, somebody's investing the time. So I like to, you know, bring this up at all, and Sean wants to bring it up before we leave, because we can't think that learning these principles is some light switch that we flip and now we don't have to do the investment. And it may also humble us into how much we can accomplish given the last 3,000 years of precedent of how much it takes to bring people together we care about in really connected ways. And I like to say it's going to take 5 times longer than you think it will. I might be wrong, it might be 10 times more, maybe you're lucky and it's only 4 times more, but the point is it's not 20% more or 50% more, it's multiples. And that's just the reality of it.
Thank you very much. We will leave it there. An incredible gift that you have given us with your time and your wisdom. And thank you to everybody who had a question coming in from, goodness, all over the place. Hopefully this gives you a sense of what's ahead for all of us. Every one of us that's taken a step to join this community, the V+ experience we're going to be having together, is got something to offer. Every single one of you brings value to this. And so my one encouragement is we're just starting to kick off here. A couple quick notes. You will be getting your community groups in just the next couple of days. They will be small, so probably less than 7 people per group. That's the aspiration and ambition. There's 350 of us that are on this journey. There's over 1,500 who are on the larger journey of experiencing V, which will kick off next week. Tristan, I think we have a couple slides that we need to pop up as we say goodbye to people. Also want to let you all know one thing that if you can make some time for, we're going to announce this either later today or first thing tomorrow. We are going to be hosting a virtual day of service. Next Tuesday, the 22nd, we will be partnering with Fair Count. That is an organization that was founded by our friend Stacey Abrams. It is focused on getting folks who have to date not been counted during the 2020 census, which will impact us in the ways that we distribute power and resources in America over the next 10 years. There's a horrific undercount that has occurred, and the census closes September 30th. So we're asking everybody, donate a little bit of your precious time next week to do a little bit of text banking. It's not like phone canvassing if you've ever done that for political campaigns. So more on that headed to your inbox soon, along with, if you haven't already, you got a note to join us on the app. That's a great way to connect with this smaller community. And you will be getting in touch with your community ambassadors and your community groups in the next couple of days. Charles, again, thank you. You've done a lot of good for a lot of good folks. You continue to be just a hero of mine. So deep respect, continued admiration, and deep gratitude. And I'm glad that today the weather, or the air rather, is good enough for you to get outside. So I'd encourage you to go do that. And I'll catch up with you again later, my friend. Thank you so much, everybody. We'll see you all very, very soon. Be safe and well.